You do the intro.
What's good with the YouTube, man? It's your boy Rojo, man, and always chilling with the homie Flacco, Convict's Perspective, man. And today we got a subject. Not a lot of people know about him. Not a lot of people talk about him. I don't think I've heard anybody else talk about him on the genre except in passing, maybe. But Black Bob, Mr. Vasquez himself, man. And Flacco was fortunate enough to not only do some research, but get some information about this individual that you guys might find very interesting.
Yeah, everybody knows that Black Bob was an influential member as far as the NF split that occurred around 1981. But little details of his personal life are really known and out there. And numerous people have recently asked, hey, can you guys do a spill on Black Bob? Can you guys break it down? So I said, you know what, man? I got enough information. I can sit there and give you guys some type of an alignment that's going to have some things that are factual, some things that may have discrepancies. This is coming from a lot of factual sources that say this is his story. So first of all, Robert Black Bob Vasquez was from Gilroy, California, was born around 1942. He caught his first case when he stabbed an Africano and ended up going to YA. From YA at the young age of 21 years old, he was sent to San Quentin. There he met the famous legendary MA Mexican Mafia member, Champ Reynoso. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I believe they were cellies at one time. And Champ took a real strong liking to Black Bob. And from my understanding, it was because Black Bob was already had that mindset. And his dad was also a gang member. I don't know if his dad was an MA member or whatnot, but his dad's name was Chino Vasquez. So he grew up with that lifestyle, that culture, being involved in the criminal aspect of life out there. So at a young age of 21, Black Bob was already having his sisters running heroin into San Quentin. And the MA took notice of this. But apparently through that lines, there was a lot of issues going on with Maravilla and other hoods. Even though Maravilla had a lot of MA members, there's always been a long outstanding conflict between the MA and certain Maravilla members. And I think it was around 1965, okay, Bruce Weddle Morgan, who was in charge of the NF at that time, and Chalo Hernandez, who's Cheyenne Cadena's cousin, he was second in command. They recruited Black Bob as a secret familiano under the NFM. And this is back when they used to have the Padrino system, as we know. They had the Padre and the Dio, all these different positions. Now, I don't even know their total rank and file, man. But I think the NF at that time may have had only about 25 members at that time. And that's where the skirmishes and everything at that time. I believe he was present in 1968. I'm not sure if he was there in San Quentin at that time after Chalo left, but we know Baba was there and other influential NF members were there. So I gotta backtrack that. So around 1969, Black Bob left to the streets and he was put in charge of the streets. And we got to remember, the NF wasn't really that deep. They were basically starting to recruit themselves, and they were going through that expulsion. A lot of its original members were from down south, like Joker Mendoza, John Lips Valdez. Who else was from there? All kinds. Babo from Santa Barbara. Tarzan from Pomona got recruited around 1969. So they had a lot of original members that were from down south. And he was the first ever, I believe, NF member that was recruited from up north. And that occurred around 1965, like I just stated. So when he came back, we all know about the 5-year war that was occurring between 68 to 72. There was peace talks with Cheyenne. There was a big issue that ended up happening at that time when Joe Morgan ordered the hit of NF leader John Lips Valdez. Shortly after John Lips Valdez got stabbed, he didn't die. He decided to drop out months later and started to debrief. And that's when they started to elect the whole paramilitary structure that started to change. And they decided to elect a general. And that's at the time is when Baba was elected the general at that time, with his first captain being Death Row Joe. And all these individuals, Death Row Joe, Manzanas from New York, Babo, in addition to that, Black Bob, they all had a lot to do with restructuring the organization as far as putting a new constitution, new rank and file, lieutenants, captains, generals, all that stuff changed, squad leaders. they made it into a whole paramilitary structure, and they started a whole new security procedure to secure themselves on these lines. And I think Black Bob was the one, before they even started that, they used to have what they called it was called a recruiting. They had a recruiting thing that they started for the NF, to where they had to go through a process of how they used to evaluate their soldiers and like that. And he's the one that started to emphasize what type of recruitments that they needed, you know. And along those lines, years later, is when they used to have a lot of reports. He ends up in Soledad. And I forgot which wing it is, but he was with Bobo and Death Row Joe. Now, what people don't realize about Black Bob was he was well versed in the Constitution, but he couldn't write that well, believe it or not. His verbal skills, his comprehension like that. So he did a lot of things verbally. And one of the things that they requested for him is to analyze where the direction of the organization needed to go and what downfalls he's seen. So all this stuff that we did years later, as far as like off-tier reports and analysis of soldiers and how to recruit people, Black Bob was starting to do that in the early 70s. And he's one of the ones that said the biggest downfall for the NF organization was the usage of dope. So that's around the time 75. You're going to hear different stories. You know what I mean? Like I said, anytime we do history, I'm pretty informed. I'm pretty damn good at it, but it doesn't mean I always get the right dates right and so forth. But to my understanding, it was around 1975 when this implementation came about. So fast track. So as we know, the NF's numbers started to swarm. They went on a recruiting frenzy, and they had strongholds in Soledad, Chino, DVI. Those were like the main three hubs, right? And that's why they had such a relationship with the Chino centers. People don't know, is because NF had such a stronghold at California Institute for Men down in Chino, California, as well as there was a lot of NF members, including the one whose dad was, the Chino centers used to be a car club. People don't realize that before it became a gang. And one of the NF members that was in the system, his dad started that car club. Okay. Now they had influence over, with the Black Angels and so forth, right? But there's another MA member who's Daryl Castleton from Ontario, whose dad had high ties to the MA. So that's how the Black Angels started to pull. So you had this little power struggle going on between the recruiting bases out in the streets in the Ontario area, which we all know that those were strong areas with NF activity. So fast track, as all this was going on within the NF organization, you had allegations that were coming up with about Bobo and Death Row Joe, about misuses of funds. Why with all these criminal activities? I think at that time they were putting 75% was supposed to go to the NF bank, and of criminal activities, 15% was supposed to go to the soldados out there, and no one was seeing none of the money. All these regiments that started to occur, like in 75 that we discussed, I talk about the first established regiment was Fresno. Before that, they started experimenting with regiments in San Jose, in Stockton as well. I mean, I never knew that. I just found that information recently, because we've always been told Fresno was the first regiment, which is true, but they were already doing experimental regiments at that time. And when you had all these regiments out there, Santa Barbara, San Diego, Chino, Fresno, Bakersfield, Sanjo, where's all this money going, right? Now, there's been allegations that Bobo was more of a thug. He pushed that more criminal organization part, like armored car robberies and stuff like that. But that Death Row Joe was very intellect. You know what I mean? As far as that, I've heard from actual NF members who claimed that it was Death Row Joe who misappropriated a lot of those funds for himself, which could make sense because he was the first one to lock it up after all these allegations happened. And so at that time, Black Bob was a captain, then he was stripped. And then what ended up happening, he had an individual named Ezekiel, I forgot his last name, man, but Coneo from Santa Clara, and a couple other individuals, Rabbit. And they're the ones that put that push to impeach Bobo and Death Row Joe. And when they did that, when they impeached these individuals, I mean, they brought up charges and allegations. They got rid of the whole Constitution. He already knew the Constitution up here in his head. I mean, like I said, he couldn't read or write that well, but he could obtain things verbally. So he could store anything up here. And that's one thing about Black Bob that made him such a significant leader, later on down the lines. And he pressed the issue that too much power being given to one man without checks and balances was causing these issues. Now, as we know, there was a big split, and these individuals were impeached, both Bobo and Death Row Joe. Death Row Joe flipped. Bobo kept on getting hit, and a lot of other individuals, like, a lot of the old timers were siding with Bobo that felt it was unjust. A lot of the younger crowd, they were siding with Black Bob. You know what I mean? Like Hobo, Tibbs, Corny, Pinky, Wolfie, all these old school NF members now, they were all young in their prime, putting in work. So when all these impeachments happened, a lot of them started to get slammed down and transferred out. You know what I mean? They had the NF leadership that was in Folsom. They called them the Folsom Six. And that was Black Bob, Pinky, Chente Arojo from Chino, Corny, Wolfie, and did I already say Black Bob?
I don't know.
Well, there were six of them, man. Let me rephrase it so I get it right, guys. Okay, Black Bob, Pinky, Chente, right? Corny, Wolfie, and there was one other individual that's right on the tip of my tongue. I'm trying to think of Corny, Wolfie, and I want to say maybe it was Tibbs. I could be wrong on that, man. I'll go back and retake my notes, and I'll put it in the comments, man. So you had the Folsom Six, and those were the ones that put up the idea for the Nuestra, the Northern Structure at that time. And they used to call Black Bob the coach. And see, they decided at that time that they needed to establish a mesa for the NF at that time. And that's when you had, the OGB started, and it's had different names and different titles over the years, as we both know. I mean, you're a little more familiar with that. But he's the one that established those three general positions, because it would defeat the purpose of him when he impeached Bobo, right? And Death Row Joe. It would defeat the purpose for him to appoint himself the Nuestro General.
Right.
So it would be hypocritical. And he was that smart. So he also signed off on the bonds. As we know, Corny is the forefather of the NR. He's the one that wrote the bonds and had support from Brown Bob, Copas, Manos, all kinds of other C's. You know what I mean? They put their influence on at that time. But he ends up paroling, I think, around 83, 84. And with all the stuff that was going on, for some reason, he decided to walk away from the organization. You know what I'm saying? And to my understanding, you know what I'm saying, he made it very clear to a lot of very influential NF members at that time. You know what I'm saying? Don't worry about them, don't touch them, because he knows where their families are as well. So this created a whole lot of stirring emotions, and he took off to Arizona for a while and started to change his life. You know what I'm saying? But there's always been rumors that even though he walked away, I mean, he's had a lot of family members that have been involved with the organizational business years later, man.
Yeah, man. You know what I had heard in regards to that, man, was on the Black Widow indictments, man, 2000, whatever, 2000, what was it, 1, 2, something in there?
2001.
Yeah, that Black Bob's daughter was actually Diana Vasquez, that girl who got indicted in that indictment. And I've never been able to find out if that was a fact or not, man, but apparently it is, man.
That's a confirmed fact. Diana Vasquez was in fact his daughter, man. And I'm going to give you right now this. The sixth one, right, was Manzanas, is who I forgot.
There you go.
You know what I'm saying? It was Robert Vasquez, Pinky Hernandez, Chente Rojo, Manzanas, Corny, and Steve Prado, Wolfie. Those were the six that were left in charge. And they are the brainstorm for the Northern Structure, Nuestra. Believe it or not, that group of six came up with that, because with all the conflict that was occurring with the NF1, the NF2, and we've heard Sundown break it down. So we've heard different theories, and everybody's going to have their different truth of what happened. But the Folsom Six, that was the leadership at that time. So it just goes to show, man, like with Corny and Pinky, they go back 40 years of holding leadership positions, man, because this is back in 1981. So at the young age, man, I think Corny at that time may have been he may have only been about 20 years old, 21 years old. He was already looked at as a high-ranking leadership. You know what I'm saying? So that says a lot about Corny right there, man. You know,
Yeah,
and
no doubt.
you know, and so like Black Bob, you don't hear too much about it. So when I gathered information, and you know, there's a lot of stuff that I already knew about him. Like we already knew that he was the main figure behind the Bobo Death Row Joe, and he had a lot to do with creating the CAT system and creating the Mesa. So what shocked me when I did more research about him was that he couldn't read or write that well. That he was able to have so much information up here, and he knew the Constitution so well that, you know, the campaign that you see about the federal and state that you see now, that's been going on for 20 years now. This dude was able to win. This dude was able to win against two individuals who've been NF leaderships for years. He was able to win that war within 1 year. That's crazy, you know. And there's also rumors. He claims that there was also rumors that DRJ and Bobo, that they were also doing heroin, but at the same time they were having people whacked. You know what I'm saying? But there's some things I learned that it's just on his account from his story that I've heard from people, because a lot of people say that it was all Death Row Joe. You know what I'm saying? Like I've talked to Bo, I talked to Sundown, I talked to other people. They say that Bobo wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed and basically got played by DRJ. Wasn't cross-referencing where the money was going. DRJ was giving him enough money to keep his beak wet, and was believing everything was going in the direction it was supposed to go.
That was kind of what I had heard. The version I had heard of it as well was that basically that the homie got played out of pocket by, somebody who with a little bit more of a shiesty agenda. You know what I mean? Not nothing that was avoidable, man, because people do weird stuff all the time, man, and people are gonna try to pull the wool over your eyes, so to speak. And the history that I had got about that from Tibbs DC is that's exactly basically what went down. He just got tangled, and it ended up into a big old ordeal.
I mean, what's interesting when you look at that whole situation, man, is that Fig, we've all read The Last General Standing, man. Like Fig in his book, his whole thing wasn't to try to clear Death Row Joe. He was trying to clear Bobo. And every NF member that I've talked to during that time area that were around or in the mix, you know what I mean? They've all said the same thing. I mean, that Bobo made some questionable decisions, He had his own brother whacked, you know what I'm saying? He had a brother whacked, and he started dating the female right after he had him whacked. You know what I'm saying? And the money issue, you know what I'm saying? But Bobo did have a lot to do with pushing that organization in the direction it went, because he was more of a thug. He had that criminal mindset. Death Row Joe was more crafty, though, and more conniving, if that makes sense. Yeah. And him being in that position, the number one captain, he basically was running that whole organization. And all Bobo basically was a figurehead. I mean, his main part of authority was he could declare war. But who was taking care of all the money at that time? Death Row Joe.
Yeah, I've had a lot of people ask me, man, in roundabout ways or, directly, whatever, like, what are the qualifications you need to have to be in that group? You know what I mean? And there's not really no plain cut answer, because like you said, this individual's, more of a thug. This individual's more intellectual. This dude has good business acumen. That dude right there is a straight killer. There's no real way to answer, what the qualifications are, man. The qualifications, they can encompass many different characteristics out of an individual. You know what I mean? Where, let's say Flacco's a big bread earner, and Gunner's he shoots everybody you tell him to, and Rojo, whatever the case might be. There's not no like set characteristic, quality, or trait in a human being that necessarily qualifies or disqualifies you from joining that group. You know what I mean? What it boils down to, man, is what other people perceive you as, what you can contribute, what they think it's all about benefit, and it's all about the dollar at the end of the day, man. So ultimately, if you have the ability to generate income and not be soft in any form or fashion, those are the only qualifications, man. But there's people out there can't read or write. There's been a lot of C's that haven't been able to read or write, that people be like, oh, he's dumb, he can't read and write. Man, he'll whack everybody. He'll
DC
whack
was one.
everybody you ever loved, though. You know what I mean? So you got a guy, he's sharp. He can't read and write. Okay. But hey, you tell this guy to go handle something, bro, he's handling it like he just went insane. You know what I mean?
Think
So
about
you
it.
can't, there's no set standard, you know?
I look at the current struggle. This dude was able to win over in 1 year. An internal conflict. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It didn't go on for years and years. And what I thought was fucking amazing, bro, was you did all this work to bring an impeachment and change the organization. He did all that work. You know what I mean? He's the main backbone of that whole situation. To lay it down 3 years later to drop out, or did he even really drop out? Because we got to remember the 80s, no one knows about the NF history in the 80s is very limited information at that time, man.
Sure.
Not a lot is known. You know, the structure was given birth to Nuestra at that time by the Folsom Six, you know, signed off by many other people, was to breathe life back into the cause and the lucha, back out there in the main lines.
You know what I think most of the struggle was back at that time, bro, was communication. You know what I mean? They didn't have the communication set off as well as, you know, they learned how to do even in the secure housing units in Pelican Bay and Corcoran. I just didn't think they had the communication back then. And that's why you can't pull a lot of information from back then unless you actually talk to somebody who was there. But then it comes back to this, is that their point of view? Is that what they were told, or is that what happened? Because there's going to be three parts of the story. What really happened, what you say happened, what they say happened, you know? So
now trip on this though, right? You know, 1984, he allegedly walked away, right?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And we know about the NF sleepers and all of that. You know what I'm saying? Right. I'm just throwing out all kinds of crazy stuff, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you never know.
17 years later, his daughter, I forgot how old she was. She wasn't that old. Was indicted in Operation Black Widow.
Yeah.
His son, Sniper Vasquez, was in Pelican Bay SHU as well, or Pelican Bay Mainline. So he's had a lot of family members still coming through the system. So I always kind of tripped on that. How years later, if he's supposed to be this person that's supposed to be on the hit list, because I heard they sent some people after him. You know what I'm saying? As far back as 2002, they were looking for him. You know what I'm saying? But how did his family continue to be involved years later? You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, if my dad was part of that, you know what I'm saying? Like his daughter, and she got indicted. I mean, apparently I think she flipped as well, man. You know what I'm saying? On that little lista I showed you, her name is on it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So, you know.
Yeah, I knew that back 15, 18 years ago, you know.
But I did not know that was his daughter.
No, I didn't know it was his daughter, but I knew she had flipped, you know what I mean?
You know. So that's the story of Black Bob. There's a lot of stuff that's occurred within, you know what I mean? Like, you know, his nickname was called the Coach because he's the one that established the homeboys to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning when they were in the SHU and bust down and bring that military structure. You know what I mean? That was his name. You know what I'm saying? And I think we get too caught up in talking about Bobo and Death Row Joe and Corny, Pinky, and Tibbs and all them because they're all well known. You know what I mean? They're current, and then the ones that are in the past, but no one really gives credit to the change that Black Bob created and how he went about it, man. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? That he went in there slick, you know what I'm saying? And got people to believe and fall behind him. I mean, he was a captain, then he was stripped. He did this, if I'm not wrong, okay, I believe I'm correct on this. He was able to pull this off, not even being a captain. I think he had just got his captains, and I think he reascended his own position to be captain at that time. And he ended up stripping all the other captains, you know, which was stated in both Figs and Sundown's book, you know, and that was just to restructure everything, man. They changed everything, you know. They rebuilt the whole organization. They still took a lot of the same, you know, guidelines, you know, that came from the NF Constitution, you know, the 14 ways of a warrior, all these different things that they've had for years. And, you know, and then they expanded the Constitution to make it more sophisticated, it was already militant, but now they felt that they had the checks and balances with the Mesa and then the council and all the captains and everybody having a voting process, and they changed everything.
Right. Yeah. And that's still, man, it's still being used to this day, at least as far as the feds go. I don't know exactly what's going on in the state and whatever they're trying to do. I have no idea, but they're still playing by that thing that he established all them years ago to this day, man. You know, they haven't tinkered with it really and, you know, revised it or nothing like that, you know?
Yeah, see, and two of those individuals, man, like I said, that were strongly behind it was besides Black Bob, was Brown Bob was also involved from Morgan Hill. He was a big push, big supporter of Black Bob, as well was Rabbit. You know what I mean? All these people ended up becoming influential members,
Right.
all from small towns. They weren't from the big cities. They weren't from Salinas. They weren't from Saho. You know, that's what I felt was kind of unique at that time was you had Carnales. I mean, at the end, I think the mess at the end, I don't know. I'm wondering how far Pinky may have been a general for a long time, bro, to be honest with you, because we know as far back as 1989, Pinky was still a general.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? We know, and they were calling him part of the Folsom Six. So when I'm reviewing all this information, and a lot of it cross-reference everything that I've been told, I was able to get more details and provide the listeners out here a little bit more information, you know what I mean, about Black Bob. There may be a few discrepancies where I may be off on a day or this situation, but this is pretty accurate information I'm providing.
Yeah, no doubt. 100%. All right, YouTube, man. That'll about wrap it up for this episode, man. We appreciate you as always. Hit that like and subscribe. You still got about a week left on the raffle on both of those J's. We got the J1s, the the North Carolina, Chicago edition. Then we got the 3s. You know what I mean? So if you want to get a ticket, hit the dang PayPal or the Cash App and let us know. I'll post both of those up later. And we send ours, man. I got to meet the LA Times gentleman last night. That was real dope. And we salute them.
Did they try to recruit you or what, bro?
Oh yeah, man. They jumped me in, bro. It was crazy. Nah, they're good people, man. They're good people for sure, man. That was dope, man. Too bad you were busy. That would have been cool to have you out there.
Man,
but
I couldn't make it to California, brother.
It's all good, man. It happens. So we'll get back to you, YouTube, and have a good Monday.